Hi, this is Mark Wahlstrom, and you're watching Speaking of Settlements, a featured broadcast here on the Legal Broadcast Network. Well, on this week's edition of Speaking of Settlements, I take on the settlement planning industry, the plaintiff side of the structured settlement profession. As those of you who watch my commentary and read it know, we spent a little bit of time in the last 2 weeks really taking a look at a lot of the issues that have plagued the structured settlement industry for years on the defense side, some of the structural problems, some of the sales practices. And, but by and large, when we wrap that up, one of the things I've concluded, and people who know me privately, as well as the people who've read this commentary know, I really believe the defense side of the business has done a good job cleaning up most of their mess. Now, a lot of that has happened as a result of sort of at the point of a gun, if you will, either litigation, investigations, modifications of business practices. But the fact is, many of the things that were problems on the defense side are no longer there. But the bigger problem that we face is our industry is still stagnant. We're not getting premium growth. And as somebody who helped really found the plaintiff side of this business, who's worked in it for almost 25 years exclusively through my company, Wahlstrom and Associates, and somebody who's fought a long, hard battle to make the plaintiff structured settlement expert have an equal place at the table, not just in our industry, but at settlement conferences and with lawyers across the country. One of the biggest issues and problems that we face is, without a doubt, the I would call the equally poor professional practices of many structured settlement experts on the plaintiff side. So if you read my blog posts on the Settlement Channel or on Speaking of Settlements, you'll know that we've addressed this issue. But this is the week that we're going after the plaintiff side of the business. And the plaintiff side is certainly not without blame. In fact, I would contend that many of the same things that plaintiff people for years, if not decades, have complained about on the defense side are now being visited upon and are plaguing the plaintiff side of our business and are threatening, I think, to have the same negative impact and the same problems in our profession that we faced due to the hubris and the arrogance of people on the defense side of the community for the previous 20 years. So let me jump into it. The name of my blog post was "Everybody is a Crook But Me." And essentially that really kind of sums up what passes for marketing and salesmanship on the plaintiff side. We have essentially promoted ourselves as the guys who balanced the scales, if you will, between plaintiffs and defendants. We were the guys who helped expose the underwriting abuses. We were the people who talked about the issue of rebating. But as those issues fade away and are no longer practiced on the defense side, we look at this and realize that many, if not all, of the plaintiff guys are still using these as their marketing tactics. So I want to cover 4 specific areas that I think are real issues and real problems on the plaintiff side that need to be addressed, need to be corrected, and the plaintiff guys have got to move on. The first one is we have a lot of people who are calling themselves plaintiff experts who are really nothing more than opportunists. They're people who worked on the defense side, people who worked for casualty companies, who spent years, if not decades, devoting themselves to, I think, in many cases, abusing plaintiffs and plaintiff attorneys. And suddenly they turn into plaintiff experts. And for many of them, you know what their sales pitch is, and we've all heard it. Well, the insurance companies, the casualty companies, they all know me and I know them, and I can get your claim settled faster, and I might even be able to get you a little bit more money because of my relationship with the guys on the defense side. Really? Are you kidding me? So essentially your marketing pitch is that I'm selling out the people I've worked for years. I'm exploiting my relationships to your benefit. Who do you trust in that situation? Do you trust somebody whose marketing ploy is, I'm stabbing my former partners, employers, and sponsors and the people who work with me in the back, and I'll take care of you? Fact is, somebody who's doing that, that's their marketing pitch, they're an opportunist. They blow with the wind. They don't represent anybody. They're there to place an annuity and nothing more. It's the most cynical of all sales pitches. Trial lawyers and personal injury victims who fall for that, I think, make a serious mistake. If you're going to be a plaintiff expert, if you're going to market yourself as a plaintiff structured settlement effort, at least take the time to present something to the trial lawyer and the client stating that you're working with them, that you're representing them, and that you're not going to have communications with the defense. You're not going to be working with, utilizing those relationships with the defense. I think it's highly unethical. I think it's unprofessional. And I think it's a short-lived phenomenon, but you do see it. Second thing we run into, which I refer to as many of the negative marketing and the stuff we've talked about, is they're all rebating, they're all post-case underwriting, they're all steering, they're all doing these things to cheat you, and you need to hire me so I can level the playing field. Now, when I switched over to the plaintiff side in 1985, was that the case? Absolutely. You couldn't even get the cost of the annuity. You couldn't even have access to markets. Early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, was that still true? Of course it was true. But for the last 7 to 5 years, is that the case? Not in the least. You have a few companies that still have some practices that I wish they would curtail, and I think they're going to be curtailed, and many of these issues are beginning to fall by the wayside, such as approved lists and approved brokers and some of those matters. But if you continue to rehash practices and things that are no longer an issue, really all you're doing is you're like a guy who sits here and says, well, don't go on a cruise because the Titanic sunk. It's 100 years ago. Get over it. This isn't happening now. You have to provide value to people other than scaring people into saying everyone in your profession is a crook or incompetent. All it does is cloud the mind and the reputation of the settlement professional in the eyes of trial lawyers. They begin to think we're all crooks. They begin to think we're all incompetent, that all we have to offer is a little bit of inside knowledge. That's not how it works. We're talking about programming and planning income for seriously injured people who need professional financial assistance and advice. That's what we offer, not a negotiating edge. Third thing is the issue of soft money. This drives me to distraction, but there's so many plaintiff firms that pour money into trial lawyer organizations, donations to political campaigns, partnering with trial lawyer firms and setting up business ventures so that they can capture structured settlements. I think this is the single biggest mistake that the plaintiff side of our business makes. All we're doing is selling out cheap. We're telling people that we don't even respect ourselves as professionals, that we're willing to kick back and rebate and give money and give donations, all to get the same exclusivity that we bemoaned when defense brokers did it. And once again, all it does is diminish us in the eyes of trial lawyers and ultimately in the eyes of their clients. We look like people who can be bought. We look like people who are patsies and suckers that just throw the money. Now you're talking to somebody who spent the last 25 years fiercely fighting for the rights of trial lawyers and personal injury victims to have the right to representation. There is no bigger supporter of trial lawyers and personal injury victims than myself. However, this careless, thoughtless, cheapening of our business by agreeing to throw money to groups in exchange for some vague promises, an approved broker as the right person, it's a mistake. It's always a mistake, and it's going to come back to haunt us, and I think it already is. We're viewed with disdain by many trial lawyers and trial lawyer groups, and they only like us as long as we're putting out and putting money in their pockets. It's a terrible way to do business, and I think it's to our detriment that we're doing it. And finally, the last thing is that you have people who put themselves out there as a settlement professional or a structured settlement planning professional. They don't have professional designations. They wouldn't know what an MSA was. They don't know what a QSF is, and they don't know what a SNT is. And I'm not going to tell you. You can look it up yourself. The bottom line is most of the guys in our business have made a living just brokering annuities. They don't take the time to learn how to plan. They don't take the time to educate themselves. And I'm talking on the plaintiff side. Now, are there exceptions? Of course there's exceptions. There are outstanding planners on the plaintiff side. And whenever I make these comments and do these things, it appears that I'm throwing everybody under the bus. I'm not. There are some outstanding professionals who do a great job, and I think we all know who they are. What I'm talking about are the people who simply slap a label on there, go in and do a poor job, buy their way into business, and use scare tactics to get there. All right, so what do we do, people? Next week, speaking of settlements, we're going to start getting into how we can begin to rebrand our industry, rebrand our profession, and begin to change the perception of casualty companies, lawyers, judges, and personal injury victims about what the structured settlement profession is really all about. Don't miss it. Come on back next week. Watch my commentary here on the Legal Broadcast Network. Read my posts on the Settlement Channel or Speaking of Settlements, and I'll talk to you again next week. I'm Mark Wahlstrom. Have a good day.